Marcus Johnson rolled his wheelchair through the glass doors of First National Bank on a bright Friday afternoon in May. The cool air from the bank's air conditioning hit his face as he entered, a welcome relief from the hot sun outside. Marcus was a tall man with broad shoulders, but his most striking features were his warm brown eyes and the confident smile he wore despite the challenges life had thrown his way. At 45 years old, Marcus had gotten used to the looks people gave him when they saw his wheelchair. Some stared with pity, others looked away uncomfortably, and a few, the ones Marcus appreciated most, simply saw him as another person going about his day. Before the car accident 3 years ago that took the use of his legs, Marcus had never thought much about how people with disabilities were treated. Now he noticed everything. The bank was busy today. A long line of customers stretched from the teller windows almost to the door. Marcus took his place at the end of the line, pulling out his phone to check emails while he waited. As the lead software engineer at Apex Technologies, his inbox was always full of messages needing his attention. While scrolling through his emails, Marcus felt eyes on him. He glanced up to see one of the tellers, a blonde woman with a tight smile watching him. When their eyes met, she quickly looked away. Marcus had seen that look before, curiosity mixed with something else he couldn't quite name. He shrugged it off and went back to his phone. The line moved slowly. Marcus noticed an elderly woman in front of him shifting her weight from one foot to the other, clearly tired from standing. "Ma'am, would you like to sit down?" Marcus asked, pointing to the empty space beside him. "There's room for you to pull up a chair, and I won't be going anywhere." He smiled at his own joke. The woman looked relieved. "Thank you, young man. These old legs aren't what they used to be." She pulled a chair from the nearby waiting area and sat down gratefully. Marcus and the woman, who introduced herself as Betty, chatted while the line inched forward. Betty told him about her grandchildren and showed him pictures on her phone. Marcus listened with genuine interest, offering kind comments about each photo. As they neared the front of the line, Marcus could see the teller who had been watching him earlier. Her nameplate read Heather Mills. She worked quickly but barely looked at her customers, her movements efficient but impersonal. The teller next to her, a young man named Kyle, according to his nameplate, smiled at each person and made small talk as he processed their transactions. "Next customer, please," Heather called out, not looking up from her computer. Betty patted Marcus on the arm. "It was nice talking with you, dear. I hope you have a good day." She moved to Kyle's window, leaving Marcus to deal with Heather. Marcus wheeled himself up to Heather's window. "Good afternoon," he said pleasantly. Heather finally looked up. Her eyes widened slightly before narrowing. She glanced at Marcus, then at his wheelchair, then back to his face. "How can I help you?" she asked, her voice noticeably cooler than the tone she had used with the previous customer. "I'd like to deposit this check, please," Marcus said, sliding a check in his ID through the slot under the glass window. The check was for $75,000, payment for a major software project he had just completed for a client in New York. Heather picked up the check and studied it. Her eyebrows shot up when she saw the amount. She looked at Marcus's ID, then at him, then back at the check. The expression on her face changed from surprise to suspicion. "This is a lot of money," she said, her voice loud enough for nearby customers to hear. "Where did you get this?" Marcus was surprised by her question. "It's payment for a consulting project I completed," he explained calmly. "I'm a software engineer." Heather gave him a look that clearly showed she didn't believe him. "We need to verify this. It's bank policy for checks this size." Her eyes flicked to his wheelchair again. "That's fine," Marcus said. "I understand you need to follow procedure." Heather held up the check, examining it closely. "You sure this is yours?" she asked with a raised eyebrow. "This is a pretty big check for someone like you." The bank suddenly seemed quieter. Marcus felt his chest tighten. "Excuse me? What do you mean by someone like me?" Heather rolled her eyes. "Well, you know," she said, gesturing vaguely at his wheelchair. "People on disability usually don't have checks this size. We need to be careful about fraud." The customers in line behind Marcus fell silent. Betty, who was just finishing her transaction with Kyle, turned to look. An older man in a suit stopped in the middle of filling out a deposit slip. The bank manager, a tall man with gray hair named Greg Phillips, was walking by but stopped when he heard Heather's comment. Marcus took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. This wasn't the first time someone had made assumptions about him because of his wheelchair, but it still stung every time. "Ma'am, I'm a software engineer for Apex Technologies," Marcus explained, keeping his voice level despite the anger building inside him. "This is payment for a consulting project I just completed for a client. My disability has nothing to do with my professional abilities or the legitimacy of this check." Heather smirked. "Right. And I suppose you wheeled yourself to work every day?" She turned to her colleague Kyle and whispered something that made him look uncomfortable. Kyle didn't laugh, but shifted nervously, clearly not wanting to be part of this situation. By now, everyone nearby was watching. Greg Phillips moved closer, listening to the exchange with a deep frown on his face. Marcus gripped the arms of his wheelchair tightly, his knuckles turning white. He had worked hard to rebuild his life after the accident. He had pushed through months of painful physical therapy, learned to drive with hand controls, and continued his career despite many people telling him it would be too difficult. And now this woman was reducing him to nothing but his disability, making assumptions that stung more than she could know. "Actually," Marcus said, his voice quiet but firm, "I drive myself to work in my specially equipped vehicle. I lead a team of 15 engineers. And yes, this check is mine, earned through my work and expertise, not through any kind of fraud." A flash of uncertainty crossed Heather's face, but she quickly covered it with another smirk. "Well, we still need to verify this check. It could take several days to clear." Marcus nodded slowly. "That's standard procedure, and I understand completely. What I don't understand is why you feel the need to question the source of my income based on the fact that I use a wheelchair." Heather's cheeks flushed red. "I'm just doing my job. We have to be careful. Your job is to provide customer service and process transactions," Marcus said, "not to make assumptions about people based on their appearance." Greg Phillips finally stepped forward. "Is there a problem here?" he asked, looking from Marcus to Heather and back again. Before Marcus could answer, an elderly man in line behind him spoke up. "This young lady is treating this gentleman very poorly," he said, pointing at Heather, "making comments about his wheelchair and suggesting he's committing fraud." Betty joined in, her kind face now stern with disapproval. "I heard it too. Very disrespectful." Greg's expression darkened. "Ms. Mills, please come with me to my office." He turned to Marcus with an apologetic look. "Sir, I'm very sorry for this situation. Kyle will help you complete your transaction right away." As Heather walked away with Greg, her shoulders stiff and her face red with embarrassment, Marcus felt the eyes of everyone in the bank on him. He hadn't wanted to cause a scene, but he also knew that staying silent would only allow such behavior to continue. Kyle quickly processed Marcus's deposit, apologizing repeatedly for his colleague's behavior. As Marcus turned his wheelchair to leave, several customers nodded at him with respect. Betty gave him a thumbs up. Marcus smiled back at them, grateful for their support. Outside the bank, Marcus sat in his wheelchair for a moment, letting the warm sun wash over him. His heart was still beating fast from the confrontation, but there was also a sense of pride. Years ago, he might have let Heather's comments slide, too embarrassed or shocked to speak up. Today, he had stood his ground. Little did Marcus know that this was just the beginning of a chain of events that would change not only Heather's life, but the culture of First National Bank itself. Marcus sat in his car in the bank parking lot, his hands still shaking slightly from the encounter. He had learned to control his emotions over the years, especially after the accident. People often treated him differently now that he was in a wheelchair. Some were overly helpful, some awkward, and a few, like Heather, were openly prejudiced. But it still hurt every time. He pulled out his phone and opened his contacts. His finger hovered over his brother-in-law's name, Paul Carter, the CEO of First National Bank. Marcus rarely used his family connection to Paul, preferring to make his own way in the world. But today's incident wasn't just about him. If Heather treated him this way, how might she treat others who didn't have powerful connections? After a moment of thought, Marcus put his phone away. He would give the bank manager, Greg Phillips, a chance to handle the situation properly first. If nothing was done, then he would call Paul. The next morning, Marcus woke early. Saturday was usually his day to relax, but today he couldn't stop thinking about what had happened at the bank. He made himself a cup of coffee and wheeled over to the large window in his living room that overlooked the city. The sun was just beginning to rise, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Marcus lived in a modern apartment specially designed for wheelchair accessibility. Wide doorways, lowered countertops, and a roll-in shower made it easy for him to move around independently. He had bought the place after his accident, determined to create a new life for himself. His phone rang, breaking the morning quiet. It was an unknown number. Marcus answered with a cautious, "Hello? Mr. Johnson? This is Greg Phillips from First National Bank." The manager's voice sounded tired, as if he hadn't slept well. "Yes, Mr. Phillips. How can I help you?" Marcus replied, surprised by the early call. "I wanted to personally apologize for what happened yesterday," Greg said. "Ms. Mills's behavior was completely unacceptable. We at First National Bank do not tolerate discrimination of any kind." Marcus appreciated the apology, but wondered what actions would follow the words. "Thank you for calling, Mr. Phillips. I accept your apology. May I ask what steps the bank will be taking to address this issue?" Greg cleared his throat. "Well, Ms. Mills has been suspended pending a full investigation. We're also reviewing our training procedures to ensure all staff understand our policies on equal treatment of customers." "I see," Marcus said, nodding even though Greg couldn't see him. "That sounds like a good start." "There's something else," Greg continued. "Several customers who witnessed the incident have posted about it online. The story is starting to get attention." Marcus frowned. He hadn't expected this. "What kind of attention?" "A video clip of part of the interaction has been shared on social media. Someone must have recorded it on their phone. It's been viewed thousands of times already." Greg sounded worried. "The bank's public relations team is preparing a statement." After ending the call with Greg, Marcus quickly opened his social media accounts. Sure enough, a video was circulating showing Heather's disrespectful treatment of him. The hashtag #RespectMarcus was trending, with people sharing their own stories of discrimination. Marcus sat back in his wheelchair, unsure how to feel. He hadn't wanted to become the center of attention, but if his experience helped bring awareness to the issues faced by people with disabilities, perhaps some good could come from it. His phone rang again. This time it was Paul, his brother-in-law. "Marcus, I just saw the video," Paul said without preamble. "Why didn't you call me yesterday?" "I wanted to give the branch manager a chance to handle it," Marcus explained. "I don't like using our connection to get special treatment." Paul sighed. "This isn't about special treatment. It's about basic respect and dignity. I'm coming over. We need to talk about this in person." An hour later, Paul arrived at Marcus's apartment. Despite being the CEO of a major bank, Paul was dressed casually in jeans and a polo shirt. His face showed the strain of dealing with a potential public relations crisis. "The video doesn't show everything," Paul said as he sat down on Marcus's couch. "What exactly happened?" Marcus told him the full story, not leaving out any details. As he spoke, Paul's expression grew increasingly troubled. "This isn't the first complaint about Heather Mills," Paul admitted when Marcus finished. "HR has received concerns before, but nothing this serious, nothing that could be clearly proven." Marcus leaned forward in his wheelchair. "So she has a history of this behavior?" Paul nodded. "It seems so. We found 3 complaints in the last year, all from customers of color or with disabilities. She was given warnings and sent to sensitivity training, but clearly it wasn't enough." "What happens now?" Marcus asked. "Officially, we're conducting a full investigation," Paul said. "But between us, Heather will be terminated." We can't keep someone with those attitudes in a customer-facing position, or in any position at the bank for that matter. Marcus felt conflicted. He didn't want anyone to lose their job, but he also understood the need for consequences. Is there any way she could be given another chance, maybe with more training? Paul looked surprised. After how she treated you, you're willing to give her another chance? Marcus shrugged. People can change if they want to. Maybe this could be a wake-up call for her. Paul shook his head in admiration. You're a better man than most, Marcus. But the decision isn't entirely up to me. The board will have the final say, and with the video going viral, they'll want decisive action. Later that day, Marcus received dozens of messages from friends and colleagues who had seen the video. Most expressed outrage on his behalf, but Marcus found himself thinking about Heather. What had made her so prejudiced? Was it possible for her to learn and grow from this experience? On Sunday afternoon, there was a knock at Marcus's door. When he opened it, he was surprised to see Betty, the elderly woman from the bank. I hope you don't mind me visiting, she said. The bank manager gave me your address. I wanted to check how you were doing. Marcus invited her in, touched by her concern. I'm doing fine, thank you. Please have a seat. Betty sat down on the couch, looking around admiringly at Marcus's apartment. This is a lovely place, so bright and open. Thank you, Marcus said. Would you like some tea? That would be nice, dear. As Marcus prepared the tea in his accessible kitchen, Betty told him that she had been interviewed by the bank's HR department about the incident. I told them exactly what I saw and heard, she said firmly. That woman had no right to treat you that way. Marcus brought the tea over and placed the cups on the coffee table. I appreciate you speaking up, Betty, both at the bank and to HR. Betty took a sip of her tea. My late husband was in a wheelchair for the last 5 years of his life. I saw how people sometimes treated him differently. It broke my heart. I'm sorry, Marcus said softly. Don't be, Betty replied. Harold never let it get him down. He'd say their ignorance is their problem, not mine. But he also believed in standing up for himself, just like you did. They talked for almost an hour. Betty shared stories about her husband, and Marcus told her about his work as a software engineer. By the time she left, Marcus felt a new sense of calm. Betty's visit had reminded him that for every person like Heather, there were many more who saw beyond his wheelchair. Monday morning arrived with a call from Paul. The board met early this morning, he said. Heather Mills has been terminated. Effective immediately. Marcus took a deep breath. I see. There's more, Paul continued. The board wants to create a new diversity and inclusion advisory committee. They'd like you to be part of it if you're willing. Marcus hadn't expected this. Me? Why? Because you handled a difficult situation with dignity and grace, Paul said. And because we need voices like yours to help us do better. As Marcus hung up the phone, he thought about how a simple trip to the bank had turned into something much bigger. He hadn't asked for this role, but perhaps he was in a unique position to help create positive change. The story wasn't over yet. In many ways, it was just beginning. 1 week after the incident at First National Bank, Marcus sat in the conference room at the bank's headquarters. Around the large oval table sat the newly formed Diversity and Inclusion Advisory Committee. There were 10 people in total. Bank executives, community leaders, and experts in disability rights. Marcus was there as both a customer who had experienced discrimination and as a respected professional in the technology field. Paul Carter, the CEO and Marcus's brother-in-law, opened the meeting. Thank you all for being here today. As you know, our bank recently failed one of our customers in a very public way. Paul nodded toward Marcus. But we're committed to learning from this mistake and making real changes. A woman named Diane Lewis, the bank's new head of diversity and inclusion, stood up. She was tall with short gray hair and a commanding presence. The first step in our action plan is a complete overhaul of our training programs. All staff will participate in expanded sensitivity training, with special focus on disability awareness. Marcus listened as the committee discussed various initiatives. Most seemed promising, but Marcus noticed they were all focused on the bank's employees rather than its customers. "May I make a suggestion?" Marcus asked during a pause in the conversation. Paul nodded. "Of course, Marcus, that's why you're here." "The training sounds excellent," Marcus said. "But I think we should also consider changes to the physical spaces in your branches. For example, not all of your ATMs are accessible to people in wheelchairs, and some of your teller windows are too high for me to see the teller comfortably." The room fell silent for a moment. Then Diane began writing furiously in her notebook. "You're absolutely right. We need to audit all our branches for accessibility." An older man named Frank Johnson, one of the bank's board members, looked uncomfortable. "That kind of renovation would be very expensive." Marcus met Frank's eyes. "So is losing customers who can't access your services, and so are discrimination lawsuits." Paul quickly stepped in. "Marcus is right. We'll conduct a full accessibility audit of all our locations and create a plan to address any issues we find." The meeting continued for another hour, with Marcus contributing several more practical suggestions. By the end, the committee had outlined a comprehensive plan to make First National Bank more inclusive and accessible to all customers. As people gathered their things to leave, Diane approached. "Marcus, thank you for your honesty today," she said. "It's refreshing to have someone in these meetings who speaks from personal experience rather than just theory." Marcus smiled. "I'm happy to help, but I have to ask, why me? There must be many disability advocates in the city with more experience than I have." Diane glanced at Paul, who was talking to another committee member across the room. "Between you and me, it wasn't just your experience at the bank that made us want you on this committee. It was how you handled it. You stood up for yourself, without becoming angry or bitter. That's a rare quality." After the meeting, Paul invited Marcus to join him for lunch at a restaurant near the bank headquarters. As they sat at their table, Paul looked more relaxed than he had all day. "You were great in there," Paul said. "The board members listened to you." Marcus shrugged. "I just said what I thought." "Exactly. No corporate speak, no politics. Just honest feedback." Paul took a sip of his water. "There's something else I wanted to talk to you about. Something not related to the committee." Marcus raised his eyebrows. "What is it?" "I received a letter from Heather Mills yesterday," Paul said. "She asked me to forward it to you." Marcus was surprised. "Heather wrote to me? Why?" Paul pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket and handed it to Marcus. "She explains in the letter. I haven't read it, but her cover note to me indicated it was an apology." Marcus stared at the envelope, unsure if he wanted to open it. Part of him wanted to put the whole incident behind him, but another part was curious about what Heather might have to say. "You don't have to read it now," Paul said, noticing Marcus's hesitation. "Or ever if you don't want to." Marcus nodded and tucked the letter into his own pocket. "I'll read it later when I'm ready." That evening, Marcus sat in his living room with Heather's letter on the coffee table in front of him. The city lights twinkled outside his window as darkness fell. Finally, he picked up the envelope and opened it. The letter was handwritten on simple lined paper. "Dear Mr. Johnson," it began, "I am writing to offer my sincere apology for the way I treated you at First National Bank. My behavior was inexcusable, and I am deeply ashamed of my actions." Marcus continued reading. Heather explained that she had grown up in a small town with very little diversity. Her parents and grandparents had held racist views that she had absorbed without question. Moving to the city had exposed her to people from different backgrounds, but she had never fully examined her own prejudices. "Losing my job was a wake-up call," she wrote. "At first I was angry and blamed you, but as the days passed, I began to see how wrong I had been, not just on that day, but in how I viewed people who were different from me." Heather went on to explain that she had enrolled in a diversity awareness program at a local community college. She had also started volunteering at a center for people with disabilities. "I don't expect forgiveness," her letter concluded, "but I wanted you to know that your dignity in the face of my cruelty has changed my perspective. Thank you for standing up to me. It was what I needed, even though I didn't know it at the time." Marcus set the letter down, feeling a mix of emotions. He was glad that Heather seemed to be making positive changes in her life, but he also knew that one letter couldn't erase years of prejudice. Real change would take time and consistent effort on her part. The next day, Marcus decided to visit the community center where Heather had mentioned volunteering. He didn't plan to speak with her. He just wanted to see if she was really there, really trying to change. The center was housed in a renovated school building. Marcus had donated to their programs before but had never visited in person. He wheeled through the main entrance and was greeted by a young woman at the reception desk. "May I help you?" she asked with a friendly smile. "I'm just here to learn more about your programs," Marcus said. "I've donated in the past, but I'd like to get more involved." The receptionist brightened. "That's wonderful. Our volunteer coordinator, Lisa, can tell you all about our opportunities. Let me call her for you." While waiting for Lisa, Marcus glanced around the lobby. On a bulletin board, he saw photos of recent activities. In one picture, a group of volunteers was helping children with disabilities create art projects. And there, in the back row, was Heather Mills. Lisa arrived a few minutes later and gave Marcus a tour of the facility. As they passed the art room, Marcus saw Heather working with a young boy in a wheelchair. She was helping him hold a paintbrush, speaking to him with patience and respect. Heather looked up and saw Marcus. Her eyes widened in recognition and a deep blush spread across her face. For a moment she seemed frozen, unsure what to do. Then she gave him a small, hesitant nod. Marcus nodded back, neither smiling nor frowning. It was an acknowledgement. Nothing more. He wasn't ready to forgive her completely, but he could recognize that she was trying to change. After completing the tour, Marcus signed up to teach a computer skills class at the center once a week. He chose a different day than Heather's volunteer shifts. Perhaps someday they would be ready to work together, but not yet. As Marcus left the center, he felt a sense of closure beginning to form. The incident at the bank had been painful, but it had set in motion changes that might benefit many people. The bank was becoming more accessible. Heather was confronting her prejudices, and Marcus himself had found a new way to contribute to his community. The story wasn't over, but a new chapter was beginning, one with the potential for growth and healing on all sides. 3 months passed since the incident at First National Bank. Summer turned to fall, and the trees outside Marcus's apartment window changed from deep green to bright orange and red. Much had changed in those 3 months, not just the seasons. Marcus now taught computer skills classes twice a week at the community center. His students ranged from children with physical disabilities to seniors learning to use technology for the first time. The work was rewarding in ways his regular job wasn't. At Apex Technologies, he created software that people used. At the center, he connected with people directly and saw the immediate impact of his teaching. On a cool October morning, Marcus arrived at the center earlier than usual. He wanted to set up a special lesson on creating digital art for his afternoon class. As he wheeled through the main hallway, he nearly collided with someone coming around the corner. "I'm so sorry," a familiar voice said. It was Heather Mills. Marcus hadn't spoken to Heather directly since their brief eye contact 3 months ago. They had carefully maintained their distance, volunteering on different days. But scheduled changes happened, and here they were, face to face. "It's all right," Marcus said politely. "No harm done." An awkward silence hung between them. Heather looked different than she had at the bank. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore jeans and a sweatshirt with the center's logo. Her face seemed softer somehow, less hard and judgmental. "I got your letter," Marcus said, finally breaking the silence. Heather nodded, her eyes meeting his briefly before looking away. "I meant every word." "I know," Marcus replied. "I've seen you working with the kids here. You're good with them." Small smile appeared on Heather's face. "Thank you. That means a lot coming from you." She paused, then added, "I never expected to enjoy this work so much. These kids are amazing." "They are," Marcus agreed. "They've taught me as much as I've taught them." Another silence fell, but it was less tense than before. "I should get going," Heather said eventually. "I'm helping with the morning art class." "And I need to set up for my computer class, Marcus said. They parted ways, the interaction brief but significant. It wasn't friendship, but it was civil, perhaps the beginning of something like mutual respect. Later that day, Lisa, the volunteer coordinator, caught up with Marcus as he was packing up after his class. "Marcus, do you have a minute?" she asked, her expression serious. "Of course," Marcus replied. "Is everything okay?" Lisa sat down in one of the chairs next to his wheelchair. "We have a situation. The center received a large technology grant to upgrade our computer lab and create accessible workstations for people with various disabilities." "That's wonderful news," Marcus said, though he sensed there was more to the story. "It is," Lisa agreed. "But we need someone to oversee the project, someone who understands both technology and accessibility needs. Someone like you." Marcus was surprised. "Are you offering me a job?" "A paid consulting position," Lisa clarified. "You'd work with our team to design the new lab, select the right equipment, and train our staff. It would be a 6-month commitment, with the possibility of extending if we receive additional funding." Marcus thought about it. He enjoyed his volunteer work, and this would allow him to make an even bigger impact. "I'm interested," he said, "but I'd need to work around my job at Apex." "We can be flexible," Lisa assured him. "The grant committee specifically mentioned you, actually. They were impressed by your work here and your advocacy at First National Bank." Marcus was taken aback. "The bank incident? How did they know about that?" Lisa smiled. "The video may have gone viral, but it's what you did afterward that got their attention. The changes you helped implement at the bank, your volunteer work here, it shows a commitment to making real change, not just talking about it." That evening, Marcus called his sister Amy to tell her about the consulting offer. Amy was Paul's wife and one of Marcus's closest confidants. "That's amazing, Marcus," Amy said when he finished explaining. "Are you going to take it?" "I think so," Marcus replied. "I need to talk to my boss at Apex, but I think I can arrange a part-time schedule for a few months." "Paul will be thrilled when I tell him," Amy said. "He's been bragging about you to everyone who will listen. The changes at the bank have been so successful that other banks in the area are looking to implement similar programs." "Really?" Marcus hadn't realized the impact had spread beyond First National Bank. "Really?" Amy confirmed. "You started something important, Marcus. Something bigger than you probably realized." After talking with Amy, Marcus sat by his window, watching the city lights blink on as darkness fell. He thought about how a single moment, a painful one, had led to so many positive changes. The bank was more accessible now. The community center would soon have a state-of-the-art computer lab, and he had found a new purpose in teaching and advocacy. The next morning, Marcus had a meeting with his boss at Apex Technologies to discuss reducing his hours temporarily for the consulting project. To his surprise, his boss, Steve Reynolds, was enthusiastic about the idea. "This is perfect timing, actually," Steve said. "We've been talking about expanding our accessibility features in our software. Your experience with this project could be valuable for us, too." "I hadn't thought of that," Marcus admitted. "Why don't we make this official?" Steve suggested. "Part of your job at Apex will now include accessibility consulting. You can split your time between the community center project and developing better accessibility features for our products." By the end of the week, everything was arranged. Marcus would spend 3 days at Apex and 2 days at the community center. It was a perfect balance that allowed him to continue his career while pursuing his new passion for advocacy. The following Tuesday was Marcus's first official day as a consultant at the center. He arrived early, eager to begin planning the new computer lab. Lisa met him in the lobby with a stack of papers. "These are the grant documents and some initial ideas from our staff," she explained as they moved toward the meeting room. "Oh, and there's one more thing I should mention. The grant committee requested that we include someone from the disability community on the planning team." "That makes sense," Marcus said. "Do you have someone in mind?" Lisa nodded. "Yes, but I wanted to check with you first." She hesitated. "It's Heather Mills." Marcus stopped wheeling. "Heather? Why her?" "She's been taking classes in adaptive technology at the community college," Lisa explained. "She's become quite knowledgeable. And she specifically asked to work on this project, with you, if you're comfortable with it. Marcus was silent for a moment. Working directly with Heather would be challenging. Their brief encounter in the hallway had been civil, but a 6-month project was different. "Can I think about it?" he asked finally. "Of course," Lisa said. "Take your time." That evening Marcus called Betty, the elderly woman from the bank who had become a friend over the past few months. He explained the situation and his hesitation about working with Heather. "I understand your concerns," Betty said after listening, patiently. "But may I share something my Harold used to say? The true test of forgiveness is not what you say, but what you're willing to do." "You think I should agree to work with her?" Marcus said. "It wasn't a question. I think it's an opportunity," Betty replied gently. "For both of you." The next day, Marcus called Lisa and told her he was willing to work with Heather on the project. Lisa arranged a meeting for the three of them later, that week. When Friday came, Marcus arrived at the center with mixed feelings. Part of him was still uncertain about working closely with Heather, but another part was curious to see if she had truly changed. He entered the meeting room to find Heather already there, a notebook open in front of her. She looked up as he entered, her expression a mixture of hope and apprehension. "Thank you for agreeing to this," she said quietly. "I know it can't be easy for you." Marcus nodded, wheeling to the table. "I believe in second chances," he said, "and in putting good work ahead of personal feelings." Heather smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. "Then let's do good work together." As Lisa joined them and the meeting began, Marcus felt something unexpected, a sense of possibility. Not just for the project, but for healing old wounds and creating something positive from a painful experience. The journey ahead would not be easy, but it promised to be meaningful. 6 months passed quickly. Winter came and went, and spring brought new life to the city. The trees outside the community center bloomed with pink and white flowers, and inside, the new computer lab was nearly complete. Marcus and Heather had worked together 3 days a week throughout the project. Their relationship had evolved from awkward politeness to a genuine working partnership. They still didn't discuss the bank incident directly, but it hung between them like a bridge rather than a wall, something that had connected their lives in an unexpected way. On a sunny April morning, they met at the center to prepare for the grand opening of the lab, scheduled for the following day. The room that had once held outdated computers now featured state-of-the-art workstations designed to accommodate various disabilities. Adjustable height desks allowed wheelchair users to work comfortably. Special keyboards and mice made computer use possible for people with limited hand mobility. Screen readers and magnification software helped those with visual impairments. "I can't believe we're finally done," Heather said as she adjusted a monitor. Marcus nodded, looking around the room with pride. "It turned out even better than I imagined." Heather smiled. "That's because you wouldn't settle for anything less than perfect. Remember when the desks arrived and the height adjustment mechanisms were too stiff? And you spent 3 hours on the phone with the manufacturer until they agreed to replace them," Marcus added, returning her smile. "We make a good team." Heather's expression turned serious. "Marcus, there's something I've been wanting to talk to you about." Marcus could tell by her tone that this was important. "I'm listening." "I've been offered a full-time position here at the center," Heather explained, "as an accessibility coordinator. They want me to continue the work we've been doing, helping organizations become more accessible and inclusive." "That's wonderful news," Marcus said sincerely. "You've earned it." "Thank you," Heather replied. "But I'm not sure I should take it." Marcus was surprised. "Why not? You're good at this work and you clearly care about it." Heather hesitated, then said, "Because of our history, because of what happened at the bank. I worry that my presence here might make people uncomfortable, especially you." Marcus was quiet for a moment, considering her words. Then he said, "When we first started working together on this project, I wasn't sure it would work. I agreed because Betty, you remember, her from the bank, said something about forgiveness being shown through actions, not just words." Heather nodded, listening intently. These past 6 months, I've watched you work tirelessly to make this lab accessible to everyone, Marcus continued. I've seen you stay late to research the best solutions. I've heard you advocate for our users when vendors tried to cut corners. Your actions have shown me who you really are. Not that person at the bank, but someone who genuinely wants to make a difference. Tears formed in Heather's eyes. Thank you for saying that. It means more than you know. You should take the job, Marcus said firmly. The center needs someone like you. The next day, the community center was filled with excitement. Local news crews had arrived to cover the opening of the new lab. Community members, donors, and local officials gathered in the main hall for the ribbon-cutting ceremony. Lisa, the volunteer coordinator, welcomed everyone and thanked the donors who had made the lab possible. Then she invited Marcus to speak. Marcus wheeled to the front of the room, feeling slightly nervous. Public speaking had never been his favorite activity, but he had prepared carefully for this moment. 6 months ago, this project began with a simple idea, he started. To create a space where technology would be accessible to everyone, regardless of their abilities. Today, that idea has become reality. He continued, describing the features of the new lab and the impact it would have on the community. Then, his tone changed slightly. But this project is about more than computers and adaptive equipment. It's about transformation. It's about seeing possibilities where others see limitations. It's about looking beyond our differences to recognize our shared humanity. Marcus glanced at Heather, who stood at the side of the room. I've learned that change is possible, not just in buildings and equipment, but in people. I've learned that a single moment can be the beginning of a journey no one expected. After Marcus finished speaking, Lisa announced that Heather Mills had accepted the position of full-time accessibility coordinator. There was warm applause, especially from the center's regular users who had come to know Heather over the past months. When the ceremony ended and the crowd moved to tour the new
lab, Paul Carter, the CEO of First National Bank, approached Marcus. Impressive speech, Paul said, shaking Marcus's hand.
And an even more impressive facility. Thanks for coming, Marcus replied. And for the bank's donation to the project. Paul nodded. It was the least we could do. By the way, I've been meaning to tell you, the changes we implemented at the bank have increased our customer satisfaction ratings by 20%. Other banks are now following our lead. Before Marcus could respond, Betty appeared at his side. Marcus, dear, the newspaper reporter wants to take your picture in the new lab. Oh, hello, Paul. As Betty led Marcus away, he saw Heather talking with a young man in a wheelchair who had recently started attending the center. She was showing him how to use one of the new computers, her face animated with enthusiasm. 1 week later, Marcus received a call from a national disability rights organization. They had heard about the computer lab and his advocacy work at First National Bank. They wanted him to be a keynote speaker at their annual conference. Me? Marcus asked, surprised. I'm not a professional speaker. You have something more valuable than professional speaking skills, the caller explained. You have a powerful story and a record of creating real change. We need voices like yours. After some thought, Marcus accepted the invitation. He spent the next month preparing his speech with help from Betty, who had been a high school English teacher before retiring. The day of the conference arrived. As Marcus waited backstage, he felt a mix of nerves and excitement. He had invited several people to attend: Paul and Amy, Betty, Lisa from the center, and Heather. When it was time, Marcus wheeled onto the stage to warm applause. The lights were bright, and the audience of several hundred people was a blur. But, in the front row, he could see his friends clearly. 2 years ago, Marcus began, I was in a car accident that left me unable to walk. In an instant, my life changed completely. I had to learn new ways to do almost everything. He paused, looking out at the audience. But the biggest challenges I faced weren't physical. They were the assumptions people made about me because I use a wheelchair. The woman who speaks loudly and slowly to me, assuming I can't hear or understand. The man who asks my friend what I would like to order at a restaurant, as if I can't speak for myself. The bank teller who couldn't believe a check I received was legitimate because People like me don't earn that kind of money. Marcus glanced at Heather in the front row. She gave him a small nod of encouragement. That bank teller changed my life, Marcus continued. Not because she hurt me with her prejudice, but because that moment led to unexpected opportunities for growth and change. For her, for the bank, for me. As Marcus continued his speech, he shared the story of the past year, the viral video, the changes at the bank, the computer lab at the community center. He spoke about the importance of standing up against discrimination, but also about the power of forgiveness and second chances. The woman who once mocked me now works full-time helping others with disabilities, he said toward the end of his speech. The bank that once failed me now leads the industry in accessibility. And I, who once saw advocacy as someone else's job, now see it as part of my purpose. The applause when he finished was thunderous. As Marcus wheeled off stage, he felt a sense of completion. The painful incident at the bank had come full circle, transformed into something positive and meaningful. Later, at a small celebration dinner with his friends, Betty raised her glass in a toast. To Marcus, she said, who turned a moment of cruelty into a movement of change. And to second chances, Marcus added, looking at Heather. May we all be fortunate enough to give them and receive them when needed. As they clinked their glasses together, Marcus reflected on the unexpected journey of the past year. One moment in a bank had changed the course of multiple lives. It was a reminder that even our most difficult experiences can lead to growth and transformation if we approach them with courage, dignity, and an open heart.